Hi, I'm going to talk to you about carbohydrates. For those of you who have the book, this is Module 1.2. We'll go over some information on carbs, and then I'll give you a chance to discuss some of those claims you may have heard about carbohydrates, such as carbohydrates are addictive, sugar causes hyperactivity. I want to know, where did you get that information from? What have you heard about it? And then we'll talk about those claims. Okay? All right. So let's have a look. Carbohydrates, or carbs, are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And henceforth I will write them, if you see me writing them or in any of these presentations, carbohydrates will be CHO. And that carbon is what makes them organic from a science perspective. It's a compound because it has more than one element in its structure. Carbohydrates are formed through the process of photosynthesis, where you have carbon dioxide and water on the left coming together with energy from the sun and chlorophyll in the plant to produce a molecule of glucose, and 6 molecules of oxygen are released. This is not what's called a balanced equation, so please don't check my numbers on it. Carbohydrate provides 4 calories per gram. It is the preferred energy source for the body, the brain, the central nervous system, the red blood cells, skeletal muscles. It's what the body needs for energy. The body requires carbohydrates, specifically glucose, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. It is the primary fuel that provides energy for high-intensity, short-duration exercise, which is why folks following the low-carb diets may have difficulty with their sprinting or their high-intensity exercise because their muscles need lactic acid, which comes from carbohydrate. Carbohydrates provide us with the energy currency of the cell, the ATP, at the fastest rate. We categorize carbohydrates as simple and complex, as well as refined. Simple sugars are made up of monosaccharides on the left, glucose, fructose, and galactose. No, you don't have to remember any structures. And they're also made up of the disaccharides, 2 monosaccharides linked together. 2 glucose molecules give us maltose, glucose and fructose give us sucrose, glucose and galactose give us lactose. Common names for sugars include blood sugars for glucose, fruit sugar for fructose, table sugar is sucrose, lactose is milk sugar, and we'll talk about lactose intolerance when we look at food issues and intolerances. And malt sugar, 2 maltose monosaccharides linked together, I call beer sugar because my husband makes beer and he needs his malt sugar. Complex carbohydrates include polysaccharides such as starch, which are alpha-linked glucose molecules. We'll talk about that in a second, that are linked together and can be broken apart during digestion by an enzyme, alpha amylase. You don't need to know that now, but those molecules are broken apart and release energy. That's why starch is digestible and provides calories. These glucose molecules are then released and absorbed into the bloodstream, and that's why glucose is also known as blood sugar. We also have fiber, a polysaccharide that is made up of beta-linked glucose molecules, and these beta-linked glucose molecules cannot be broken apart by enzymes in the human body. In cows, yes, humans not so much, so fiber is indigestible and non-caloric. Therefore, the glucose units that are linked together with these beta links are not released into the bloodstream. We do not absorb fiber. Cellulose is the most common type of fiber. If you've ever eaten celery and gotten those little pieces stuck in your teeth, those are cellulose fibers. So starch is a polysaccharide. That's how the plants store carbohydrate. Mammals, of which we are included, we store carbohydrate when we consume it and we're not using it immediately for energy. We store it in our muscle and our liver. We have a limited capacity to store carbohydrates, so when we consume excess, we'll store it as fat. We'll talk about that later. So humans store carbohydrate as glycogen, plants store carbohydrate as starch, and the indigestible beta-linked glucose molecules that are found in plants are called fiber. These are some glucose molecules linked together. What I want you to look at is the oxygen that is separating the different glucose molecules and how it's bonded to the different glucose molecules. Alpha amylose on top, the link is an alpha link. On the bottom, it's a beta link. Humans have the enzyme to break apart those alpha links. Beta links, no, we can't digest fiber. Plant sources of carbohydrates include the simple carbohydrates found in fruit. We also have sucrose, so fructose and sucrose are found in fruits, and complex carbohydrates found in these other foods. Animal sources of carbohydrate are the dairy products that contain the disaccharide lactose, honey because it's made from bees, although animal products we usually consider as a source of protein and fat. We don't usually get carbohydrate from plants. Milk and milk products provide protein and varying amounts of fat. They also provide us with lactose. We get glucose wherever we can. When the body needs glucose, it primarily will get it from food, from our carbohydrate-containing foods. If it's not getting it from food, it's getting it from the glucose that's been stored in the liver and the muscle as glycogen. A small portion of the triglyceride or fat can be used to provide us with glucose. We'll talk about that when we talk about fats, that small 3-carbon molecules called glycerol. And certain amino acids called glucogenic amino acids can provide us with glucose. We don't want to use protein for energy, but if the body needs glucose, it will get it where it can.